Chapter 1. The Day. Everything changed. It started with a sound that didn't belong. At first I thought I had imagined it, a faint, hollow knock echoing somewhere deep in the house, the kind of a sound old wood makes when it settles at night. But it wasn't night. It was early morning, and the pale gray light creeping through my curtains told me I had overslept. Again the knock came. 3 slow taps. I sat up in bed, my pulse quickening as the silence that followed stretched too long, too deliberate. The house wasn't supposed to make sounds like that during the day. Not this house, not anymore. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, the cold floor biting into my skin. For a moment, I just sat there, listening, waiting. Nothing. I let out a quiet breath and shook my head. "You're imagining things," I muttered to myself, though the words felt thin and unconvincing. Still I stood, pulled on a sweater, and stepped into the hallway. The air felt different. That was the first thing I noticed. Not colder exactly, just heavier, like the house was holding its breath. The walls, lined with faded photographs and shadows, seemed closer than I remembered. The familiar creak of the floorboards beneath my feet sounded louder, sharper, as if the silence around them had deepened. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding smaller than I intended. No answer. I moved slowly down the hallway, past the closed door of the upstairs room, the one no one ever opened. I hesitated there, just for a second, my eyes drawn to the handle. It hadn't moved in years. Not since... Another knock. This time it came from downstairs. I froze. It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. 3 taps, slow, measured, intentional. Someone was at the front door. Relief washed over me, sudden and almost embarrassing. Of course. That's all it was. Someone knocking. A delivery, maybe. Or a neighbor. I laughed under my breath, though it sounded strained, and made my way toward the staircase. Each step creaked beneath me as I descended, the sound echoing too loudly in the quiet house. When I reached the bottom, I paused. The front door stood at the end of the narrow entryway, just as it always had. Closed. Still. Ordinary. But something felt wrong. I couldn't explain it, not then. It was just a feeling, a quiet insistence at the back of my mind that told me this moment mattered, that whatever waited on the other side of that door wasn't something I could ignore. Another knock. Closer now. I swallowed and forced myself forward. "Coming," I called, my voice steadier this time. No response. I reached the door and rested my hand on the handle. It was colder than it should have been, as if it had been sitting in winter air instead of inside the house. For a moment I hesitated, then I opened it. No one was there. The street stretched out in front of me, empty and silent. The morning light had brightened, casting long shadows across the pavement. A faint breeze stirred the leaves along the curb, but otherwise nothing moved. I stepped outside, looking left, then right. Hello? Still nothing. A flicker of unease settled in my chest. I was about to turn back inside when something caught my eye. An envelope. It lay on the doorstep, just to the side, as if it had been carefully placed there. I was certain it hadn't been there before. I crouched down slowly and picked it up. It was heavier than it looked. The paper was thick, almost rough beneath my fingers, and the color, an off-white that leaned toward gray, made it seem older than it should have been. There was no stamp, no return address, just my name, written in ink that had bled slightly into the paper, as though it had been written long ago. I stared at it, my stomach tightening. Something about the handwriting felt familiar. Not enough to place it, but enough to make my skin prickle. I stood and stepped back inside, closing the door behind me with a quiet click. The house seemed to lean inward again, the silence returning, heavier now. For a long moment I just stood there, holding the envelope. "Don't be ridiculous," I whispered to myself, but my hands didn't move. Finally I broke the seal. The paper inside was folded once, neatly, As I unfolded it, a faint scent rose from it. Dust and something older, something I couldn't name. There was only one line. "You were never meant to find the room." My breath caught. The words seemed to settle into the air around me, heavier than they should have been. I read them again, slower this time, as if they might change. They didn't. A chill ran down my spine. The room. My eyes drifted, almost against my will, toward the staircase, toward the upper floor, toward the door I had passed only minutes ago. "No," I said aloud, shaking my head. But even as I said it, something shifted inside me. A memory. Not clear, just fragments. A voice telling me to stay away. A door closing. The feeling of standing in that hallway, much younger, staring at the same handle. I had always told myself it didn't matter, that whatever was behind that door was part of a past better left alone. But now someone had written to me about it. Someone who knew. I looked back at the letter, my grip tightening. "Who sent this?" I murmured. No answer came, only silence. But it wasn't empty silence anymore. It felt expectant, as if the house itself was waiting to see what I would do next. I folded the paper slowly, my mind racing. This had to be some kind of mistake, or a joke, a bad one. There was no other explanation. And yet, the knocking, the empty doorstep, the letter. None of it felt like a joke. I took a step toward the stairs, then stopped. A part of me, loud, insistent, told me to leave it alone, to tear up the letter, forget about it, and go on with my day. Pretend nothing had happened. But another part of me, quieter but stronger, whispered something else. "You already know you won't." I exhaled slowly. Then, before I could change my mind, I turned and started up the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. The hallway above waited in stillness, the same as before, and yet not. The shadows seemed deeper now, the light dimmer, as though something had shifted in the space itself. I moved toward the door, the one no one opened, the one I had spent years ignoring. Up close, it looked exactly as I remembered. Plain, unremarkable. Just another door, but the handle was slightly turned. I stopped cold. I began, then faltered. I was certain it had been straight before. Certain. My heart began to pound. Slowly, carefully, I reached out. For a moment, my hand hovered just above the handle. Then, with a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, I touched it. Warm, not cold like the front door. Warm, as if someone had used it recently. I jerked my hand back. "No," I whispered again, but the word felt meaningless now, because deep down, I already understood. The knock, the letter, the door. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mistake. This was the beginning of something. Something I had been kept from. Something that had been waiting for me. I stared at the door, my reflection faintly visible in the worn wood. Then, slowly, I reached for the handle again. And this time, I turned it. Chapter 2. A letter that shouldn't exist. The door didn't open all at once. It resisted. Not locked, just unwilling. As if the wood itself had forgotten how to move, how to give way. The handle turned fully beneath my grip, but the door only shifted a fraction, letting out a low, strained creak that seemed too loud for the narrow hallway. I pushed harder. The gap widened slowly, reluctantly, and a breath of air slipped through, stale, heavy, untouched for years. It carried the scent of dust and something older, something faintly metallic that lingered at the back of my throat. I hesitated. Then I stepped inside. The room was smaller than I expected. For years I had imagined it differently. Larger, darker, something almost impossible. But in reality, it was just a room. 4 walls, a single narrow window, a wooden floor dulled by time. And yet, something about it felt wrong. Not in a way I could immediately explain, but in the way silence here didn't feel empty. It felt layered, as if every sound that had ever existed in this room had settled into its walls and refused to leave. I took another step in. The floor creaked beneath me, the sound sharp and sudden, breaking the stillness like glass. Dust stirred in the air, catching the faint light filtering through the window. It hadn't been opened in years, maybe longer. The glass was cloudy, muting the outside world into something distant and unreal. "Okay," I whispered, more to steady myself than anything else. There was nothing here. At least, nothing obvious. No furniture, no boxes, no signs that the room had ever been used at all. Just bare walls and a faint outline on the floor, like something had once stood there and been removed. I frowned. That didn't make sense. Why would anyone keep a room locked for years if there was nothing inside? I turned slowly, scanning the corners, the ceiling, the edges where the walls met the floor. My eyes adjusted to the dim light, picking out details I hadn't noticed at first glance. Scratches. Faint, uneven lines carved into the wood near the far wall. I moved closer. They weren't random. They formed patterns. Curved, deliberate, almost like writing. My breath slowed. Is that... I crouched down, brushing my fingers lightly over the surface. The grooves were shallow but unmistakable, etched with purpose. Not deep enough to be violent, not careless enough to be accidental. Someone had done this a long time ago. I leaned in, trying to make sense of the shapes. They didn't form letters I recognized. Not exactly. But there was a rhythm to them, a repetition that suggested meaning, a message, or a warning. A sudden chill crept up my spine. "You were never meant to find the room." The words from the letter echoed in my mind, sharper now, heavier. I straightened quickly and stepped back. "No," I said under my breath. "No, this is nothing." But the room didn't feel like nothing. It felt like something waiting to be understood. I turned toward the window, drawn by the faint light. For a moment, I considered opening it, letting in fresh air, breaking the suffocating stillness. But something stopped me. Instead, I noticed the frame. It was slightly uneven, not broken, just off, like it had been disturbed and never properly set back into place. I stepped closer and pressed my hand against the wood. It shifted, just slightly. My pulse quickened. "Okay," I whispered. Carefully, I pushed again. The frame gave way with a soft click, not a crack, not a break, a mechanism, hidden. The entire window frame loosened under my touch, sliding outward just enough to reveal a narrow gap between it and the wall. I froze. For a moment, I simply stared at it, my thoughts racing. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't age or damage. This was intentional. Someone had hidden something here. Slowly, I slipped my fingers into the gap and pulled. The panel moved with surprising ease, as if it had been opened many times before. Dust fell in thin streams as the wood shifted, revealing a small, concealed space behind the wall. A hiding place. Inside there was only one thing. Another envelope. I stared at it, my chest tightening. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. This couldn't be happening again. And yet, there it was. The same off-white paper, the same slightly rough texture, the same unsettling familiarity. I reached in and took it. It was warmer than it should have been. Just like the door handle. I stepped back, the panel still ajar behind me, and held the envelope up to the dim light. My name was written on it again. But this time, there was something else. Beneath my name, in smaller, sharper writing, were 3 words. "You opened it." A shiver ran through me. My hands trembled slightly as I turned the envelope over. Still no stamp. Still no return address. "Who are you?" I murmured, the question slipping out before I could stop it. The silence answered back. But it felt different now, closer. I swallowed hard and broke the seal. The paper inside was folded more tightly this time, as if whoever had written it had taken extra care. As I unfolded it, The same faint scent rose again. Dust. Age. Something almost forgotten. There were more words now. Not just one line. I forced myself to read. If you're reading this, it means you've already made the first mistake. My breath caught. I kept going. The room was never empty. It was never meant to be found. And now that you've opened it, it will start to remember you. A cold weight settled in my chest. Remember me? What did that even mean? My eyes scanned the rest of the page. You need to leave, not just the room, the house. Today. If you stay, it will show you things you were never supposed to see. And once it does... The sentence ended abruptly. No explanation, no signature, nothing. I stared at the page, my mind struggling to catch up. This is insane, I said aloud, my voice unsteady. But even as I said it, something shifted, a sound, soft, faint, behind me. I froze. It wasn't the creak of the floor or the whisper of dust settling. It was clearer than that. A step, slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway. My heart slammed against my ribs. I'm not alone, I whispered. The realization hit me all at once, sharp and undeniable. Someone else was in the house. I turned slowly toward the door, the letter still clutched in my hand. The hallway beyond was empty, but the air felt different now, heavier, watching. Then, another step, closer this time. And suddenly, the message in the letter didn't feel like a warning anymore. It felt like something else. Chapter 3, The Hidden Room Upstairs. I didn't move. Every instinct told me to run, to slam the door, bolt down the stairs, get out of the house, and never look back. The letter was still clutched in my hand, its edges digging into my palm, grounding me in a reality that no longer felt stable. Another step echoed through the hallway, slow, measured, not the aimless creak of an old house, but something with intention, someone. My breath came shallow as I backed further into the room, my eyes fixed on the doorway. The dim light made the hallway beyond seem longer than it was, stretching into shadows that felt too deep, too thick. "Hello?" I called, my voice barely steady. Silence. Then, a faint shift, like fabric brushing against a wall. I swallowed hard. "Who's there?" Nothing answered, but the presence didn't disappear. It lingered, watching, waiting. I took another step back, my heel scraping softly against the wooden floor. The sound felt deafening in the quiet. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Someone must have come in while I was upstairs. Maybe the door hadn't been fully closed. Maybe... No. I had closed it. I remembered the sound, the click. And even if I hadn't, no one could have entered without making more noise than this, unless they had been here already. The thought settled in, cold and heavy, watching me, waiting for me to open the room. A sharp chill ran down my spine. The letter. It will start to remember you. What does that even mean? I whispered. The words barely left my mouth before something changed. The air shifted, subtly, but unmistakably, like the room itself had reacted. I turned instinctively toward the wall, where the hidden panel still stood slightly open. The gap seemed wider now, the darkness behind it deeper than before. That wasn't possible. I was sure of it. And yet, I took a cautious step closer. The shadows inside the hidden space weren't still anymore. They moved. Not quickly, not dramatically, but enough, like something shifting just out of sight. My breath caught. "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, that's not real." But the room didn't care what I believed. The floor creaked again, behind me, closer now. I spun around. The doorway was still empty. But the hallway wasn't the same. It looked longer than before. The walls seemed to stretch, the light dimming as though something unseen had drawn a veil over it. The familiar shape of the banister at the far end felt distant, almost unreachable. My pulse thundered in my ears. "This isn't happening," I muttered. Another step. right outside the door. I staggered back. "Stop!" I said louder this time. "Just stop!" The sound ceased instantly. The silence that followed was worse, because now it felt like something was listening, considering, deciding. A sudden realization hit me, sharp and urgent. The letter. "You need to leave." Not just the room, the house. Today, I had ignored it, and now something had noticed. "I'm leaving," I said quickly, the words tumbling out. "Okay, I'm going. I didn't mean to. I'll just go." No response. But the air didn't ease. If anything, it tightened, like a held breath. I edged toward the door, my movements slow, careful. Every step felt deliberate, as if any sudden motion might provoke whatever was out there. When I reached the threshold, I stopped. The hallway loomed in front of me, unfamiliar despite being my own home. The shadows clung to the corners, too dense, too aware. "You're imagining this," I whispered. But my feet didn't move, because deep down, I knew I wasn't. Then, from somewhere behind me, a whisper, so faint I almost missed it. "Don't." I froze. The voice was soft, fragile, not threatening, not like the presence in the hallway. This was different. I turned slowly. The hidden panel. The darkness inside it had deepened, swallowing what little light reached it. "Don't go." My heart skipped. "Who?" I began, but the word caught in my throat. The voice wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from inside the wall, from the hidden space. A surge of fear mixed with something else, something sharper, more dangerous. Curiosity. "No," I said, more firmly now. "No, that's exactly what I'm doing." But my body didn't listen. My feet carried me back toward the panel, one step, then another. The air grew colder with each movement, the faint scent from the letters, dust and something older, growing stronger. "Please," the voice whispered again. It sounded closer now, clearer, and achingly familiar. I stopped just short of the opening. My hands trembled at my sides. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely audible. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, a breath, right from the darkness, and a single word. My name. The world seemed to tilt. I staggered back, my mind reeling. "That's not possible," I said, shaking my head. "That's not..." But the voice, I knew it. Not completely, not clearly, but enough. Enough to make something deep inside me twist. A memory, half-formed and fragile, pushed its way to the surface. Laughter. A smaller hand in mine. A promise I couldn't quite remember. "No," I whispered. The darkness inside the wall shifted again, and this time, something moved forward. Not fully visible, not yet, but enough to break the boundary between shadow and shape. I stumbled back toward the door, panic surging through me. "I'm leaving," I said again, louder now. "I'm leaving right now." The hallway waited. The presence there hadn't gone. If anything, it felt closer, hungrier, trapping me between two unknowns. Behind me, the whisper, soft, familiar, calling me back. Ahead of me, the silence, heavy, watching, waiting for me to step into it. My heart pounded as I stood there, caught between the two, between leaving and staying, between fear and something I didn't fully understand yet. The letter crumpled slightly in my hand as I tightened my grip. "If you stay, it will show you things you were never supposed to see." I closed my eyes for a brief second, then opened them again, and made my choice. Chapter 4. A stranger becomes an ally. I ran, not toward the hallway, toward the stairs. The decision snapped into place before I fully understood it. Pure instinct overriding fear. Whatever waited in that hallway, whatever lingered in the walls, the only thing I knew for certain was that staying still would be worse. The floor groaned beneath my feet as I rushed forward, crossing the threshold and forcing myself into the distorted corridor. The air felt thick, resisting every movement, like pushing through water instead of space. Behind me? Wait, the whisper stretched, thinning, almost breaking. I didn't stop. I can't, I gasped, more to myself than to whatever had called my name. I can't stay. Another step echoed in the hallway. Not mine. Ahead, my momentum faltered. Something was there, not visible, not fully, but the presence had shifted. It no longer lingered behind me or around me. It stood between me and the stairs, blocking the way. My chest tightened as I slowed, each step more uncertain than the last. Move, I said, my voice shaking despite my effort to steady it. I'm leaving. The silence pressed in. Then, a shape. Not solid, not clear, but enough. A distortion in the air like heat rising from pavement, forming something vaguely human. It stood motionless at the far end of the hallway where the stairs should have been. Watching me, my pulse hammered. This isn't real, I whispered. The shape tilted, just slightly, as if reacting, as if hearing me. A cold realization slid into place. It wasn't just watching, it was aware, and it wasn't going to let me pass. Behind me, the voice from the hidden space called again, fainter now, strained. Don't let it. The words cut off abruptly. Silence swallowed them whole. Something twisted in my chest. I glanced back for a fraction of a second. The open door, the shadowed room beyond, the hidden panel still ajar. Then forward again. The figure hadn't moved, but the distance between us felt shorter. Impossible. I hadn't taken a step. Okay, I said under my breath, forcing my thoughts to focus. Think. Running straight at it was a bad idea. Going back wasn't an option. Staying here, not possible. My eyes darted along the hallway, searching for anything, any advantage, any change, any detail I could use. That's when I noticed it, the wall to my right. It wasn't the same. The faded photographs that had lined it for years, family pictures, old frames, were gone. In their place, a door, narrow, unfamiliar. I stared at it. That wasn't there before, I whispered. Of course it wasn't. But neither was anything else anymore. The figure shifted. A subtle movement, but enough. A warning. Decide. Now. I didn't hesitate again. I lunged for the door. The handle turned easily beneath my grip, and I threw it open without slowing, slipping through the gap and slamming it shut behind me. The silence that followed was immediate. Absolute. I stumbled forward a step, then stopped. The air here was different, lighter, not safe, but not suffocating like the hallway. I turned slowly. The room I had entered was dimly lit, but not empty, and I wasn't alone. Someone stood across from me, a person, real, solid, not a distortion, not a shadow. They stared at me with wide eyes, just as startled as I felt. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, "You shouldn't be here," they said. Their voice was low, urgent, human. Relief hit me so suddenly it almost made me dizzy. "You," I started, then stopped, struggling to find the right words. "You're real." They frowned slightly. "Yeah, last time I checked." A strange, almost hysterical laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "Okay, good, good." "Not really," they replied quickly, stepping closer. "If you're here, that means it's already started." The words wiped the relief away just as fast as it had come. "You know about this?" I asked. They hesitated, then nodded. "More than I want to." I swallowed hard, glancing back at the door behind me. It was still closed, still quiet, but I didn't trust it. "What is that thing out there?" I asked. Their expression darkened. "It's not just one thing," they said. "That's the problem." A chill ran through me. "In the room?" I pressed. "The one upstairs, the hidden space. There's something in there. It knew my name." They went still. Completely still. For a moment, I thought they hadn't heard me. Then, "You opened it?" they said quietly. Not a question, a statement. I nodded. "I didn't know. I found a letter, and then there was another one, and it said I should leave." but I didn't. And now, you should have left, they cut in. The sharpness in their voice made me flinch. I realize that now, I said, frustration creeping in. But it's a little late for that, isn't it? They exhaled slowly, running a hand through their hair. Yeah, they admitted. It is. Silence settled between us for a moment. Then I took a step closer. Who are you? I asked. They hesitated again, as if weighing how much to say. Finally, my name's... They stopped themselves, glancing briefly at the walls, the ceiling, like even that might be listening. Then they lowered their voice. Names aren't safe here. I blinked. What? If it knows your name, they said carefully, it can find you. Faster, easier. A cold knot formed in my stomach. It already knows mine, I said. Their gaze snapped back to me. Yeah, I added, my voice quieter now. It said it, from inside the wall. For a moment, something like guilt flickered across their face. That's not good, they muttered. No, I agreed. It's not. Another silence, heavier this time. Then from somewhere beyond the door, a sound, a slow, deliberate knock. 3 taps. We both froze. The stranger's expression hardened instantly. It found you, they said. My pulse spiked. Through the door? It doesn't need doors, they replied. The knock came again, closer this time, more insistent. What do we do? I asked. They met my gaze, something steady and determined settling into their expression. Now, they said. A brief pause. Then, now we stop running. The third knock echoed through the room, and this time, the door handle began to turn. Chapter 5. The map that leads elsewhere. The handle didn't turn all the way. It stopped halfway, jerking slightly, as if something on the other side hadn't quite decided how to enter. The metal trembled under an invisible grip. I held my breath. Next to me, the stranger didn't move, but I could feel the shift in them, the tension, sharp and focused, like they had been here before. Don't touch it, they whispered. I wasn't planning to, I shot back, barely moving my lips. Another slow twist of the handle, a pause, then 3 knocks, from the inside. I flinched. That's not... I started. Yeah, the stranger cut in quietly. It doesn't care which side it's on. The handle went still. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. Because now, it felt like something was listening again, waiting for us to make the next move. I forced myself to step back, putting distance between me and the door. You said we stop running, I whispered. That doesn't look like stopping. They didn't answer immediately. Their eyes were fixed on the door, calculating. Then finally, they turned to me. We don't fight it, they said. Not directly. Great, I muttered. So what? We just let it in. No, they shook their head. We go where it can't follow. A hollow feeling settled in my chest. Where exactly is that? For a moment they hesitated. Then they glanced toward the far side of the room. Somewhere it doesn't understand yet. I followed their gaze. At first I didn't see anything unusual, just a blank stretch of wall, worn and slightly uneven like the rest of the house. Then I noticed the markings, faint, barely visible, lines scratched into the surface similar to the ones in the hidden room, but these were more structured, more deliberate, organized like directions. I stepped closer, drawn in despite everything. What is this? I asked. A map, the stranger said. I let out a short, disbelieving breath. Of what? The house? They shook their heads slowly. No, they said. Not just the house. A chill ran through me. What does that mean? They stepped up beside me, pointing to one of the lines. This place, it changes. You've already seen that. I nodded, thinking of the stretching hallway, the door that hadn't existed before. The rooms don't stay where they should, they continued. Doors lead to places they didn't yesterday. Walls open, or don't, depending on whether it wants them to. And this map tracks that? I asked. Not exactly. Their expression tightened. It shows the paths it doesn't control. I frowned. How is that possible? For a second, they didn't answer, then quietly. Because it didn't make all of this. The word settled heavily in the air. You're saying there's something else here? I asked. They didn't look at me. Yes. Before I could press further, the door behind us creaked. Not opening, just shifting. A low dragging sound like something pressing against it from the other side. My pulse spiked. We're running out of time, I said. I know. They stepped closer to the wall and traced a specific set of markings with their fingers. 3 curved lines intersecting a jagged one. This is where we are, they said. I leaned in. And this? I pointed to a narrow path branching away from it, leading toward a cluster of tighter, more chaotic symbols. Their jaw tightened. That's where we're going. Why does that feel like a bad idea? Because it is, they said plainly. Another heavy thud hit the door. Harder this time. The wood shuddered. I jumped back. That's not going to hold. It doesn't need to, they replied. Not if we're already gone. I turned back to the wall. Okay, so how does this work? Is there a door? A switch? What do we... Neither, they said. They reached out and pressed their palm flat against the markings. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lines began to shift. Not physically, not exactly, but the way they caught the light changed, bending slightly, as if the surface of the wall had softened into something less solid. I stared. That's not possible. Get used to that, they said. The air around us warped subtly, the edges of the room blurring for just a second before snapping back into focus. Except the wall wasn't the same anymore. Where the markings had been, there was now a narrow opening, dark, deep, wrong in a way that made my instincts scream. No, I said immediately. No way. It's the only way, they replied. Behind us, crack. The door splintered, not fully broken, but close. Something pushed against it again, harder this time. A faint sound slipped through the wood, not a voice, not quite, but almost. Found. You. My blood ran cold. We're out of options, the stranger said sharply. I looked at the opening, then back at the door. Another hit. The handle bent slightly. The wood groaned under pressure. I clenched my fists. This leads where? I demanded. They met my eyes. Somewhere it hasn't finished building. That wasn't reassuring at all. Another crack split through the door, a thin fracture running down its center. I sucked in a breath. Okay, I said quickly. Okay, fine. I stepped toward the opening, then hesitated. Wait, I said, turning back to them. If this thing, whatever it is, if it doesn't control that path, what does? For the first time, they looked uncertain. I don't know, they admitted. Great, I muttered. Behind us, the door burst inward slightly, the wood bowing under the force. A long, thin shadow slipped through the crack, reaching, searching. That was enough. Go, the stranger snapped. I didn't argue. I stepped into the darkness. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air changed completely. Colder, thinner, like stepping into a place that wasn't meant to be inhabited. I heard the stranger right behind me. Then, the opening snapped shut. The last thing I heard before it sealed completely was the door finally breaking and something rushing into the room we had just left. The darkness around us pulsed once, then settled. And slowly, very slowly, shapes began to form. Not a hallway, not a room, something else, something unfinished. I swallowed hard. Where are we? I whispered. Beside me, the stranger didn't answer right away. When they did, their voice was quieter than before, tense, uncertain. We're off the map now. Chapter 6, Crossing the First Line. At first, the darkness wasn't empty. It just hadn't decided what it was yet. Shapes flickered at the edges of my vision. half-formed walls, outlines that dissolved when I tried to focus on them. The ground beneath my feet felt solid one moment, then uneven the next, like stepping across something that hadn't finished becoming real. I didn't dare move too fast. "Stay close," the stranger said quietly. "I'm not going anywhere," I replied, my voice lower than I intended. That much was true. There was nowhere to go. The air here was different, not just cold, but thin, like each breath didn't quite fill my lungs. A faint hum vibrated through the space, too low to hear properly, but strong enough to feel, like standing near something vast and unseen. "What is this place?" I asked. The stranger exhaled slowly. "It's between things." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." I swallowed my frustration and took a careful step forward. The ground held, barely. A faint ripple spread outward from where my foot touched, like I had disturbed the surface of water instead of something solid. I jerked back instinctively. "Don't panic," they said quickly. "It reacts to that." "That's comforting," I muttered. Another step, this time slower. More deliberate. The ripple still came, but weaker, controlled. "Okay," I said under my breath. "Okay, I can do this." We moved together, each step cautious, measured. The darkness around us shifted as we advanced, reluctant but responsive, forming just enough structure to keep us from falling into nothing. Or at least, that's what I hoped. "How far does this go?" I asked. The stranger hesitated. "I don't know," they admitted. I stopped. "You don't know?" "I've never gone this way before." I stared at them. "You said this was the only way." "It is." "That's not reassuring." "No," they agreed. "It's not." A faint sound echoed behind us. Not loud, but wrong. Like something brushing against the edge of existence itself. We both froze. "Tell me that's not it," I whispered. They didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. "It followed us?" I said, my voice tightening. "Not exactly," they said carefully. "It can't come here the same way we did. But it can reach." The darkness behind us twitched. Something long and thin pressed against the space we had just crossed, not fully entering, but testing, probing, like fingers against glass. My pulse spiked. "We need to move." "Yeah," they said. "Now." We picked up speed. Not running, but faster, less careful. The space reacted immediately. The ground beneath us wavered, the shapes around us destabilizing, edges blurring as if reality itself couldn't keep up with us. "Slow down," the stranger warned. "We don't have time to slow down." Behind us, the reaching thing pushed further, not fully inside, but closer. The hum in the air deepened, turning into something almost audible, a low strained vibration that set my teeth on edge. "This place is breaking," I said. "No," they replied sharply. "It's resisting." That didn't sound better. A sudden drop appeared just ahead, a gap where the ground hadn't formed. I skidded to a halt, my breath catching. The edge wasn't clean. It frayed into nothing like torn fabric. "How do we cross that?" I asked. The stranger stepped up beside me, their expression tight with focus. "We don't jump," they said. "We make it." I blinked. "We make it?" They nodded toward the gap. "This place responds to intent. You just proved that." "With panic," I pointed out. "Yeah, try something else." Behind us, the reaching presence stretched further into the space, distorting the darkness around it. We didn't have time to debate. "Fine," I said. "Fine, what do I do?" "Focus," they said. "Don't think about falling. Don't think about what's behind us. Just see the path." "That's not how anything works." "It is here." Another ripple surged through the ground as the thing behind us pushed closer. I clenched my fists. "Okay," I said through gritted teeth. "Okay." I stared at the gap, tried to ignore the endless nothing below it, tried to ignore the thing behind us, tried to believe there was something there, For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a faint line appeared, barely visible, a thin stretch of something forming across the gap. "Keep going," the stranger urged. I took a step forward. The line solidified slightly beneath my foot. Another step. It held. Not fully, but enough. "Don't stop," they said. I wasn't planning to. We moved across together, each step reinforcing the path just enough to hold our weight. The space beneath us flickered, unstable, threatening to collapse if we hesitated. Behind us, the reaching thing lashed forward, not quite touching, but close enough that I felt the air shift. "Faster," I said. "Careful," they shot back. The last step, the path wavered violently as we pushed off it, landing on solid ground just as it dissolved behind us. The gap vanished, as if it had never been there. I staggered forward, catching myself. "Okay," I breathed. "Okay, that worked. For now," they said. The space ahead began to stabilize, not fully, but more than before. Shapes settled into something resembling walls again. A corridor, narrow, uneven, but real enough. I looked back. The darkness we had crossed was still there, but quieter now. The reaching presence had withdrawn, not gone, just waiting, watching. "We crossed something," I said slowly. The stranger nodded. "Yeah," they said. "We did." "What was it?" They hesitated. Then, the first line. A chill ran through me. "That doesn't sound like a good thing." "It's not," they said. "It means there's no easy way back." I looked ahead at the forming corridor, then back at the shifting darkness behind us. "Then, I guess we're not going back," I said. They didn't respond, but they didn't need to, because deep down, I already knew. We had crossed into something else entirely, and whatever this place was, it wasn't just unfinished. It was watching us learn how to survive it, and it wasn't going to make that easy. Chapter 7. Echoes of a Forgotten Story. The corridor didn't stay still. At first glance, it looked solid enough, narrow walls on either side, uneven but defined, stretching forward into a dim, gray distance. But the longer I stared, the more it shifted. Subtle distortions ran along the surface, like something underneath was trying to push through. "Don't look at it too long," the stranger said. I tore my gaze away. "Why?" "It starts to look back." A pause. "I'm not going to ask what that means." "Good." We moved forward. Each step felt more stable than before, the ground no longer rippling as violently beneath us, but the air hadn't improved. That low hum was still there, deeper now, almost like a pulse threading through the space. Alive. That thought came uninvited and refused to leave. "How far do we go?" I asked quietly. "Until it changes," they replied. "That's your answer for everything." "It's the only answer this place gives." I exhaled slowly, trying to steady my thoughts. The panic from before hadn't disappeared. It had just settled into something colder, sharper, more focused, more dangerous. We walked in silence for a while. Then, a sound. Not behind us this time. Ahead, faint, like voices. I stopped. "Do you hear that?" The stranger froze beside me, their expression tightening. "Yeah." The sound came again. Soft, layered. Not one voice, many, overlapping, whispering. A chill crept through me. "Please tell me that's not normal." "It is," they said. "That's the problem." The corridor darkened slightly as we moved closer, the walls tightening in as if narrowing the path ahead. The whispers grew clearer. Not louder, just more defined. Words began to form, broken, out of order. "Don't remember. You promised. It wasn't supposed to." I stopped again, my chest tightening. "I know that voice," I said. The stranger looked at me sharply. "Don't listen to it." But I already was. Another fragment slipped through the air. "You left me." The world seemed to tilt. "No," I whispered. "That's not—" A memory flickered. Not clear, not complete, but enough. A smaller version of myself standing in a hallway, a door closing, a voice calling after me, my steps slowing, but not stopping. I started, but the words caught. "You're not hearing them," the stranger said firmly. "You're remembering them. That's worse." Yes. The whispers shifted, changed. Now they weren't scattered. Now they were focused. On me. "Why did you go? You said you'd stay. You promised." My breath came faster. "I don't remember this," I said. "I don't. This didn't happen." The corridor pulsed. The walls flexed inward slightly, as if reacting to my denial. "Don't fight it like that," the stranger warned. "It feeds on resistance." "Well, I'm not exactly in a position to accept it either." The whisper surged, closer, sharper, and then one voice broke through the rest. Clear, familiar. "You forgot me." Everything stopped. The sound, the movement, even the hum beneath the space seemed to falter. I couldn't breathe. "I didn't forget," I said, though the words felt hollow. Because the truth was, I didn't remember. And that was worse. The corridor ahead shifted, not violently, not suddenly, but with purpose. The walls peeled back slightly, revealing something beyond them. A room, not like the ones before. This one was real, too real. Warm light spilled from it, soft and steady, cutting through the gray distortion of the corridor. The whispers quieted, retreating into the background like they had been waiting for this moment. I stared. "What is that?" I asked. The stranger didn't answer immediately. When I looked at them, their expression had changed. Not fear, not urgency. Something else. Recognition. "That's not part of this place," they said slowly. "Then what is it?" They hesitated. Then, "It's yours." A knot formed in my chest. "I don't understand." "You will," they said. The room waited. Open, inviting. And that was the most unsettling part. Nothing in this place had felt inviting before. "This is a trap," I said. "Yes," they agreed. I blinked. "That's not helpful." "It's not supposed to be," they said. "But that doesn't mean we can avoid it." I looked back at the room. The light flickered slightly, just enough to feel alive, watching. "You forgot me." The voice came again, softer now. Not accusing, just there. My chest tightened. "I have to go in there," I said. It wasn't a question. The stranger studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. "Yeah," they said. "You do. And you?" "I'll be right here." Something about that didn't sit right with me. "Right here?" "They won't follow you inside," they said, glancing briefly at the corridor behind us. "Not like that." "That's not what I meant." They met my gaze. For a moment, something unspoken passed between us. Something uncertain, fragile. Then they stepped back slightly. "I'll be here when you come out," they said. "If I come out." Neither of us said it, but we both heard it. I turned back to the room. The light seemed warmer now, closer. I took a step toward it. The corridor didn't resist, didn't shift, didn't fight me. That alone was enough to make my pulse quicken. Another step. The whispers faded completely. The hum softened. By the time I reached the threshold, it was almost quiet, normal. I hesitated. Then, "Please." The voice, right inside. I closed my eyes for a brief second, then stepped through. The moment I crossed the threshold, everything changed. The corridor vanished. The weight in the air lifted, and suddenly, I wasn't in that place anymore. I was somewhere else, somewhere familiar, somewhere I hadn't seen in years. I stood frozen, my breath catching as the realization hit me. "I remember this," I whispered. And for the first time since this began, I was more afraid of what I might find than anything that had been chasing me. Chapter 8. When Trust Begins to Crack. The room didn't feel like the others. It wasn't unstable. It wasn't shifting or breathing or pretending to exist. It was still, perfectly still, and that was wrong in its own way. I stood in the center, barely daring to move, afraid that even a breath might break whatever fragile illusion was holding this place together. Warm light spilled from a lamp I didn't remember turning on. Dustless air, clean edges, familiar walls. Too familiar. My throat tightened. No, I whispered, because I did recognize it. Not just vaguely, not like a dream, like memory, a real one. The desk near the window, the chair slightly tilted to the left, the faint scratch in the wood where something had once been carved and then erased. I took a step forward. The floor didn't creak. That alone made my skin crawl. "This isn't real," I said out loud, but the room didn't react. It didn't need to. It just waited. I moved slowly toward the desk. My fingers hovered above its surface before I even realized I was reaching for it. Something about it pulled me in, not gently, not kindly, more like gravity. A drawer sat half closed. I hesitated, then pulled it open. Inside, a photograph. I froze. My breath caught so sharply it hurt, because it was me, younger, smiling, standing next to someone whose face. My mind refused to complete the image. Every time I tried to focus, it blurred, like ink bleeding in water, like something actively resisting being remembered. My hand shook as I picked it up. Behind me, a voice whispered softly, "You remember now?" I spun around. No one. Of course. The room was still empty, but it wasn't silent anymore. The warmth in the air felt heavier now. Expectant. I said quickly. I don't remember any of this. But even as I said it, my eyes drifted back to the photo, and something inside me cracked. A soundless fracture, a feeling, not a memory yet, but the shape of one. Laughter, a promise, a door I wasn't supposed to open. My knees went weak for a second. "No," I said again, firmer this time. "This is wrong." The room dimmed slightly, just a fraction, like it didn't appreciate that answer. Behind me, the whisper returned, not from one place, from everywhere. "You left." I flinched. "That's not true," I said quickly. "You left us." The air tightened. The warmth turned colder at the edges. I stepped back from the desk. "This is some kind of trick," I said. "You're trying to..." "What? Make me believe something that didn't happen?" The room didn't respond, but the photograph in my hand changed, slowly, subtly. The second figure in the image began to sharpen, unblur, form. My breathing stopped. "No, no, no." The face became clearer, not fully, but enough for my stomach to drop. Because I knew them. And I had been trying not to. The photograph slipped from my fingers. It hit the floor without a sound, and in that instant, the room flickered. Just once, like a glitch in reality, and suddenly I remembered something else. Not the whole truth, not yet, but a piece of it. A hallway, a door. My hand on a handle I was told never to touch, and a voice behind me saying my name, not warning me, begging me. My breath shook. "I didn't mean to," I whispered. The room reacted immediately. The light pulsed brighter, warmer, almost forgiving. "You didn't mean to leave," the voice said softly. This time it didn't feel like an accusation. It felt like certainty. I pressed my hands against my head. "Stop," I said. Stop doing that." The memory pushed harder. Another fragment, a choice. Me walking away, not running, not forced, choosing. "No," I said again, louder. "That's not how it happened." But the room didn't argue. It didn't need to. Because something outside the room changed. A faint vibration, a pressure, like something approaching from far away, from the corridor, the stranger. I turned sharply toward the door I had entered through. It was no longer there, just a wall, smooth, complete. My chest tightened. No, wait." A soft crack echoed through the room, not from inside, from behind me. I turned slowly. The photograph on the floor was burning, not with fire, with light. and the blurred figure inside it was now looking at me directly. I staggered back. "This isn't real," I said again, weaker now, but the figure's lips moved, and though no sound came out, I understood it. One word, my name. The room shuddered, and for the first time since I arrived, it wasn't calm anymore. It was angry. The light flared violently, the walls began to ripple, and the voice that had been gentle just seconds before turned sharp. "You were never supposed to remember this." The air cracked, and everything started to collapse inward. Chapter 9, When Trust Begins to Crack, Part 2. The room didn't just collapse, it folded. Like paper being crushed in slow motion, the walls bending inward toward the burning photograph as if it had become a gravity point for everything that existed here. I stumbled backward, but there was nowhere stable to step. The floor beneath me rippled, turning soft for a moment, then hard again, like the room couldn't decide what it was made of. "Stop!" I shouted, though I wasn't sure who I was shouting at. The figure in the photograph was still looking at me, still saying my name without sound. The light flared brighter, too bright. I raised an arm to shield my eyes as the warmth turned into something burning, something invasive. The air itself felt like it was pressing into my skin, trying to push me somewhere else. Then, a crack, not in the room, in the air. A thin vertical line split open beside me like reality tearing at a seam, and from it, cold air rushed in, real air, the kind that belonged somewhere else. "Move," a voice shouted. The stranger. I turned instinctively. Through the fracture in the air I saw them, half visible, like they were standing on the other side of glass that didn't quite exist anymore. Their face was tense, urgent. "I can't get in," they shouted. "What is this?" I yelled back, panic rising. "What did I open?" Their eyes flicked past me toward the burning photograph. Their expression changed instantly. "No," they said under their breath. "You didn't open it. It opened you." "That doesn't help," I snapped. The room shuddered again. The voice returned, but now it wasn't just one. It was layered, multiple, familiar, unfamiliar. "You came back. You always come back. You promised." My head spun. The photograph on the floor split down the middle, and something beneath it moved. I froze. "What is that?" I whispered. The stranger's voice dropped. "Don't look at it directly." "That's not an answer." "It's a threshold," they said quickly. "A memory anchor. If it fully opens—" The sentence cut off as the room lurched violently. The walls buckled inward another step. The photograph's light spilled out like liquid, pooling across the floor in slow, unnatural waves. And from that light, a hand emerged. I stumbled back with a gasp. No, 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 no! It wasn't fully formed, not human, not yet, just shape, intent. The suggestion of fingers pressing up through something that wasn't solid matter. The stranger cursed under their breath. "You need to break it." "I don't know how." "Stop remembering it." I froze. "What?" "Whatever you're seeing, whatever you're feeling, stop feeding it. It forms from recognition." "That's impossible." "Then die here," they snapped. That silenced me. The hand in the light twitched, slowly curling as if testing the shape of existence. The room reacted instantly, tightening again, squeezing everything closer to that point. I forced myself to look away, to not see it, but that was harder than it sounded, because my mind kept pulling me back, the memory, the hallway, the door, my hand on the handle, a voice behind me saying, "Don't." I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. "No," I whispered. "I didn't do that. I didn't." The room shuddered violently. The fracture in the air widened. The stranger shouted again. "Now." "What do I do?" I yelled back. "Choose something else." "That's not an instruction." "Then lie to it," they snapped. "Anything that breaks the loop." The loop, the word stuck, because something about this did feel like a loop, a repetition, a cycle I couldn't see but was trapped inside. The hand in the light rose higher, more defined now. fingers curling toward me, recognizing me, waiting, my breath hitched. And then I did the only thing I could think of. I didn't leave, I said. The room froze. Even the collapsing stopped for a fraction of a second. The stranger stared at me. What? They said sharply. I kept going, voice shaking but steadying as I spoke. I didn't leave, I repeated. I was taken. The air shifted. The light flickered. The hand hesitated. The memory pushed back hard in my mind, but I forced it away. I was taken, I said again, louder. I didn't choose it. The room trembled. The photograph's light flickered violently. The stranger's eyes widened. That might actually... The sentence didn't finish, because the hand stopped, and slowly began to withdraw. The light dimmed. The crack in the air steadied. But the room didn't heal. It just paused, like it was reconsidering. Then the voice returned, but this time it wasn't angry. It was curious. Taken? I swallowed hard. Yes, I said, forcing the word out. Taken. Silence. Then a shift. The collapsing stopped. The room loosened its grip slightly, like a hand relaxing but not letting go. The stranger exhaled sharply. That bought us time. I looked at them. Time for what? Their gaze was fixed on the fading photograph. For it to decide if you're lying. A cold realization settled over me. This thing, I said quietly, it doesn't know what I am. No, they said. Another pause. Then, even quieter, and that makes you dangerous. The room darkened slightly, not collapsing anymore. Just watching, listening, deciding what story I would be allowed to survive. Chapter 10. The Cost of Doing What's Right. The room didn't collapse anymore, but it also didn't let us go. It held its shape like a clenched fist, loosened just enough to breathe, but tight enough to remind us who was in control. The light from the broken photograph had faded into a dull glow on the floor, like embers refusing to die. The hand that had started to form was gone now, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it hadn't disappeared, only withdrawn, watching, waiting for the next version of the truth. The stranger stepped fully through the fracture in the air, and the tears sealed behind them with a soft, sickening sound, like skin closing over a wound. You shouldn't have said that, they muttered immediately. I turned toward them. I shouldn't have said what? That I was taken? Yes. That makes no sense. It makes too much sense, they replied sharply. That's why it reacted. I stared at them. So I was supposed to just agree with whatever it wanted me to believe? No, they said. You were supposed to survive long enough to choose carefully. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Great. Next time I'll schedule my existential breakdown more responsibly. They didn't respond to that. Their eyes stayed fixed on the floor where the photograph had been. The glow was fading, but not fully gone. It's stabilizing again, they said quietly. Stabilizing into what? That depends, they replied. On what it accepts. A chill ran through me. So it's judging me. Yes. That's insane. They looked at me then. Really looked. Everything here is insane. The only difference is whether you survive it. That silence between us stretched tighter than before. Then I asked, quieter now. Who are you really? They hesitated. For the first time since I met them, they didn't answer immediately. I told you, they said carefully. No, I replied. You didn't. You said names aren't safe. Something flickered in their expression, not fear, something heavier, regret. The room shifted slightly, as if reacting to the question. I noticed it now, the way everything responded to meaning. Not movement, not noise, meaning, truth, denial. This place didn't just react to reality, it reacted to belief. The stranger exhaled slowly. If I tell you, it might lock onto it. Lock onto what? Me, they said simply. My stomach tightened. It already knows me, so what difference does it make? A lot. they said. Because you're still flexible. That doesn't sound good. It isn't, they admitted. The glow on the floor pulsed faintly. I stepped closer to it despite myself. The stranger immediately tensed. Don't. I need to understand, I said. You don't need to touch it. I didn't say I was going to. But I was already kneeling. The light wasn't hot anymore. It was familiar. Like standing near a memory you've almost lost, but can still feel in your bones. You're doing it again, the stranger said quietly. Doing what? Listening instead of choosing. That made me pause. The glow pulsed once, and in that pulse, I saw it. Not the hand, not the photograph, something deeper. A corridor, but not the one I had come from. Another one, and me, standing at its end, watching myself leave. My breath caught. That's not real, I whispered. The glow flickered. The room reacted instantly, walls tightening slightly. Don't, the stranger warned. You're feeding it again. I'm not doing anything. Yes, you are, they snapped. You're trying to make it consistent. That didn't make sense, but somehow it did. The place didn't want truth. It wanted agreement, a single coherent version of events, and I was fracturing it. The glow surged again, and this time a sound came with it, not a voice, a verdict. You contradict. The room shuddered. The stranger grabbed my arm. We need to move. Now. Where? Anywhere that isn't a conclusion. That's not a place. It is here. Another pulse. The light flared. The floor beneath us began to rise slightly, like the room was preparing to reset itself, rewrite itself, correct the contradiction we represented. The stranger pulled me back. It's deciding what you are, they said urgently. I didn't ask it to. It doesn't care. The glow intensified, and I felt it then, something reaching through me, not physically, not painfully, but searching, sorting, trying to assign me a role in the version of events it preferred. My chest tightened, and suddenly I understood something. It doesn't like uncertainty, I said. The stranger blinked. What? It's not judging me, I said, more firmly now. It's trying to finish the story. The glow paused. The room went still. The stranger stared at me. Yeah, they said slowly. That's exactly what it's doing. I stood up. Something inside me shifted with that realization, because if it wanted a story, then stories could be changed. I'm not your conclusion, I said out loud. The room reacted instantly. A sharp crack ran through the air. The glow flickered violently. The stranger stepped back. Careful. But I kept going. I'm not taken. I'm not a mistake. I'm not a missing piece. The room shook. The walls strained. The light surged, and I felt it pushing back harder now, angrier, but also uncertain. The stranger looked at me like I had just done something irreversible. Yeah, they said quietly. You definitely just changed it. The room held its breath, and for the first time since I entered it, it didn't know what to do next. Chapter 11, Losing What Matters Most. The hesitation didn't last. The room recovered quickly, too quickly, like it had simply paused to adjust its understanding of me, then decided that uncertainty was unacceptable. The walls tightened again, not violently, precisely, like a system correcting an error. The glow on the floor pulsed once more, and the fragment of photograph began to reassemble itself in a way that made my stomach turn. Not restoring, rewriting. Okay, the stranger said sharply. That got its attention. That's not good. I noticed, I said. The air felt thinner again, like the room was removing anything that didn't support its version of reality. Every breath felt slightly more expensive than the last. The figure in the light was back, but different now, more defined, less human, less memory, more concept. You resist, it said. The voice wasn't coming from anywhere specific. It was the room itself. I clenched my fists. Yeah, I've been told I do that. The stranger grabbed my arm again. We need to move now. Where? I snapped. They pointed, not at a door, but at the shifting edge of the room where the fracture in reality had once been. It was still there, barely. A thin seam of unstable space, flickering like a wound refusing to close. That won't hold long, they said. Nothing here does, I replied. The room reacted to that. The walls tightened another step, a warning. The stranger's grip on my arm tightened. Listen to me, they said urgently. If it finalizes you here, you'll stop being someone it has to deal with. You'll become part of the structure. That sounds bad. It is. The light surged again, and this time, it changed direction. It wasn't pulling at me anymore. It was reaching past me, through me, towards something behind. I felt it before I understood it. A pressure shift, a focus. The stranger went still. Oh, no, they whispered. I turned. What? Their expression had gone pale in a way I hadn't seen before. Not fear of the room. Fear of what the room was now choosing. It picked a thread, they said quietly. A what? A connection, they replied. Something real enough to stabilize you by comparison. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? They didn't answer. Because they were already looking past me, at the fracture, at the place where the air had been torn open. And then I heard it. A sound from beyond the room. Not the stranger, not the structure. A voice. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. Are you there? My blood went cold. No, I whispered. The glow brightened instantly. The room responded like it had found proof. The stranger swore under their breath. It found your anchor. My what? Something you care about, they said quickly. Something it can use to stabilize you. The voice came again, closer, more fragile. Please, answer. My breath caught. I don't know that voice, I said immediately. But my body reacted before my mind could fully commit to the denial. A memory tried to surface. I forced it down. The room shuddered. The stranger grabbed my shoulders now. If you acknowledge it, it locks in. Don't do that. I'm not acknowledging anything, but the voice was already inside the fracture, right at the edge, waiting. I'm still here. The room pulsed harder, and suddenly, the stranger's hand on my shoulder felt colder, heavier, less stable. I turned to look at them. Their expression had changed. Confusion, then alarm. What? I said quickly. What is it? They looked at their own hand like it was becoming unfamiliar. I think, they started, then stopped. Their voice tightened. I think it's using me. The words hit harder than anything else so far. No, I said immediately. No, that's not possible. You're here. You're real. I was, they said quietly. The room shifted, subtly, like it agreed. The voice from beyond the fracture spoke again, closer now, and clearer. Don't leave me again. The stranger flinched. So did I, because this time, the voice wasn't just familiar. It was attached to them too. The glow flared violently. The room made its decision, and the stranger began to fade. Not instantly, not dramatically, but piece by piece, like something erasing them from a page. No. I grabbed their arm. My hand passed through slightly. Panic surged. No, stop! They looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since it began. And there was something there I hadn't seen before. Not fear, acceptance. You have to choose, they said quietly. What? Me, they said, or the anchor. The voice from the fracture grew louder, more desperate. Please. The room tightened again. The glow split between them. Two stabilizing points, two truths, two versions of reality it could accept. The stranger was fading faster now, and I understood. If I kept them, the voice outside would anchor me. If I chose the voice, the stranger would disappear completely. Either way, something would be lost. My breath shook. This is insane, I whispered. Yeah, they said softly. It is. The room pressed harder, waiting, deciding, and for the first time since this began, it made me choose something I couldn't undo. Chapter 12. Silence before the storm. The room didn't rush me. That was the worst part. It waited, like it already knew how I would break. The stranger's outline was fading faster now, edges dissolving into the air like ink in water. Their hand was still half in mine, but the sensation of it was becoming unreliable, as if memory itself was failing to hold them together. The voice from the fracture grew softer, not louder, closer, more certain. Please, I'm here. 2 anchors, 2 losses, and the room demanded only one version of reality survive. My chest tightened painfully. I can't do this, I whispered. The stranger looked at me, really looked, and there was no pressure in their gaze anymore, no urgency, just something quieter, understanding. You already are, they said. The room reacted instantly to my hesitation. The light surged, sharpening everything. The decision narrowed. Faster. Finalizing. I felt it then, something inside me beginning to lock, like the world was sealing a verdict before I could appeal it. No, I said louder. No, wait. But waiting wasn't something this place did anymore. The fracture in the air pulsed. The voice came through again. Don't forget me. And something in me fractured back. A memory hit harder than the rest. Not clear, not complete, but enough. A laugh, a hand pulling me forward. A promise I didn't remember making, but felt like I had broken anyway. My breath caught. The stranger's grip weakened further. Hey, they said softly. I looked at them, and for a second, everything else fell away. Not the room, not the voice, just them, standing there at the edge of disappearing, as if they had always known they were temporary. I'm not real in the way you think I am, they said quietly. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means I was made to keep you moving, they said. That's all. That's not true. It is here, they replied. The room trembled in approval. The voice from the fracture called again. I never left. The stranger flinched slightly at that, and I realized something that made my throat tighten. They were both anchors, but only one was being erased, because only one was currently standing in front of me. The other was pulling from somewhere else, somewhere I hadn't fully accepted yet. My thoughts scattered. This is wrong, I said. This choice is wrong. The room answered immediately. No voice, just pressure, increasing, closing in. The stranger's form was almost gone now, only fragments of presence left, like a page burning at the edges. You don't have much time, they said calmly. That's not helping, I snapped. I know. A pause, then quieter. But you've always hated being told what's real. That hit something inside me. The room tightened again. The decision was about to finalize. The voice from the fracture trembled now. Please. And for the first time, I noticed something. The voice wasn't coming into the room. It was coming through me, like it had been there longer than anything else, like it had been waiting for recognition. My breath slowed. The stranger noticed. Their expression shifted slightly. You see it now, they said. I swallowed hard. I don't know what I see. Yes, you do, they replied. The room surged. Final pressure, final collapse into decision. Everything narrowed to a single point. 2 losses, 1 choice. And then I stopped looking at either of them. I looked at the room itself, at the structure, at the thing forcing the story into shape. And I said very quietly, no. The room paused, not because it understood, but because it didn't expect refusal. The pressure increased immediately, crushing, demanding. Neither, I said again. The stranger's fading eyes widened slightly. The voice from the fracture stuttered. What? I'm not choosing either of you, I said. The room reacted violently. The light fractured. The walls shook. The decision tried to force itself forward, but I didn't stop. "I'm not your conclusion," I said again, louder this time. "I'm not your anchor point. I'm not your correction. I'm not your missing piece." The air cracked sharply, the stranger flickered, the voice from the fracture distorted, both losing stability. But something else happened too. The room hesitated, just for a fraction, and in that fraction, I understood. It wasn't just choosing between them, it was choosing whether I was allowed to remain unfinished. I stepped back, away from both anchors, away from both versions of reality. The room surged in protest. Everything tightened, but I kept going, one step, then another. "I don't accept your ending," I said. The room shook violently, the light exploded outward, and for the first time, it didn't know where to put me. Chapter 13, Facing the Truth at Last. The explosion of light didn't burn, it erased. For a moment there was nothing. No room, no corridor, no fracture in the air, no voice calling my name from somewhere it shouldn't exist. Only silence so complete it felt physical. Then sound returned. Not all at once, piece by piece. A distant hum, a slow breath, my own heartbeat. I opened my eyes. I was standing, somewhere, but not the same somewhere. The room was gone. Or maybe it had never been fully there to begin with. What remained was a wide, empty space filled with pale light that didn't seem to come from any source. No walls, no ceiling I could trust, just an endless, quiet expanse that felt like standing inside the pause between thoughts. My legs nearly gave out. "What is this?" I whispered. No answer came, but something moved in the distance. A shift, a ripple through the silence, and then the stranger, or what was left of them. They weren't fully formed anymore. Not like before. More like a suggestion of presence, stitched together from fading impressions. But they were still there, barely. "You did it," they said quietly. I stared at them. Did what? Broke the choice. I swallowed hard. I didn't feel like I won anything. A faint, almost sad smile crossed their face. "That's because you didn't." The space around us pulsed faintly, as if reacting to their words. I looked around again. "Where are we?" The stranger followed my gaze. "Outside the structure," they said. "That doesn't help. It's not meant to." A long silence stretched between us. Then I asked quieter, "Was any of it real?" That question changed something. The air shifted. The space seemed to lean closer, listening. The stranger didn't answer immediately. That alone told me more than anything else so far. Finally, they spoke. "Define real," they said. I let out a sharp breath. "Don't do that." "I'm not avoiding it," they said. "I'm being accurate." "That's worse." A faint flicker passed through their form, like the idea of them was struggling to remain consistent. I clenched my fists. I saw things, remembered things, heard voices that knew my name. That has to mean something. "It does," they said softly. "What?" "It means you are inside something that builds meaning instead of truth." I shook my head. "That's not an answer." "It's the only one that survives out here." Another silence. This one heavier. I looked down at my hands. They felt real, mostly. But I wasn't entirely sure what that meant anymore. "I didn't choose either of them," I said finally. The stranger nodded. "I know." "And now what?" For the first time, their expression shifted into something almost uncertain. "Now it stops chasing a version of you that fits," they said. "That doesn't sound good." "It isn't," they admitted. The space around us rippled again, not violently, more like awareness spreading. Something noticing that I was no longer contained, no longer defined. I felt it before I saw it. That pressure again, not from behind, not from ahead, from everywhere. The structure wasn't gone, it was just recalculating. "You destabilized it," the stranger said quietly. "I didn't mean to." That doesn't matter, they replied. A pause then. Nothing here cares about intent. The silence deepened, and then a sound returned. Far away, faint, familiar. The voice from the fracture, still calling, but no longer desperate, no longer broken, just present. You can't leave. My stomach tightened. That's not possible, I whispered. The stranger looked at me. It's not inside the room anymore, they said. I turned slowly. What does that mean? Their answer came softly. It means it learned how to follow you out. The space around us darkened slightly, not like night, like attention, focusing, and somewhere in that vast, empty nowhere, something began to remember me correctly, for the first time, and that was when I understood the real cost of what I had done. I hadn't escaped the story. I had taken it with me. Chapter 14, The Cost of Doing What's Right. The silence after the voice wasn't empty anymore. It was aware, like the space itself had stopped pretending it didn't notice me. The stranger's form flickered again, weaker now, as if even this place, outside the structure, was struggling to keep them consistent. You shouldn't have heard that, they said quietly. I swallowed. I didn't choose to hear it. That's the problem, they replied. It didn't need your permission anymore. A cold weight settled in my chest. So it followed me out, I said. The stranger didn't deny it. That was answer enough. The distant voice came again, closer, not louder, just more certain. You can't leave something unfinished. The space around us rippled, not like before. This was different, less like a reaction, more like recognition. I turned slowly, scanning the endless pale expanse. There's nothing here, I whispered. The stranger exhaled. That's what makes it dangerous. I looked at them sharply. That doesn't make sense. It does here, they said. A pause. Then, more quietly. Here. Absence is just another way of being watched. The words sank in slowly. Behind me, something shifted again. Not visible, but felt, like pressure building behind my thoughts. I clenched my fists. What does it want from me? The stranger hesitated, then answered. A conclusion. My stomach dropped. That's it? That's everything, they said. The voice returned. You broke the shape. The space trembled. I stepped back instinctively. I didn't break anything. I refused it. That's the same thing, the stranger said. The light around us dimmed slightly, not fading, focusing. I realized something then. It wasn't just chasing me anymore. It was learning me, adapting. Every refusal I made wasn't an escape. It was information. You said I destabilized it, I said slowly. Yes. And now it's following me? Yes. Out here? Yes. I stared at them. So there's no escape. The stranger looked away for a second, then back. No clean one, they said. That mattered. I grabbed onto it immediately. Then what kind is there? They hesitated again, longer this time. Finally, the kind you survive, they said. The space around us pulsed sharply, and the voice, now unmistakably closer, whispered, I remember you now. My breath caught. No, I said immediately. No, you don't. The stranger turned toward me sharply. Don't engage it. I'm not engaging it. You are, they said. Every denial is still recognition. That hit hard. Too hard. I forced myself to go still, to stop reacting, to stop feeding it. But it was already inside the pattern. I felt it then. Not sound, not voice, but alignment. Something trying to map itself onto me, to become consistent again. The stranger stepped closer, their voice lower now. There's only one way this stops growing, they said. I looked at them. Let me guess, I won't like it. You won't, they admitted. A pause, then. You have to give it what it wants. I laughed once, short, sharp, disbelieving. A conclusion? Yes. And what conclusion is that? The stranger's expression tightened. That you belong to it. The air dropped several degrees. I stared at them. That's not happening. It already thinks it is, they said. The voice echoed again. Closer still. You always come back. The space around us flickered violently for a second, and in that flicker, I saw something. Not the emptiness, not the stranger. A place, a house, the same house, the hallway, the door upstairs, waiting. My breath hitched. The stranger noticed immediately. What did you see? I shook my head. Nothing. But that wasn't true. It was showing me continuity. A thread, a path back. I clenched my jaw. It's trying to rewrite me into a loop. Yes, they said quietly. So I stop it, I said. The stranger studied me carefully. How? I looked at the flickering space, at the memory trying to form, at the story trying to finish itself, and I realized something I didn't want to say out loud. If it wants a conclusion, I said slowly, then I give it one it can't use. The stranger stiffened. That's not how this works. It has to be, I said. The voice returned again, soft, final. Welcome home. The space around us began to stabilize, not collapse, not shift, stabilize, like it had accepted something. The stranger's expression changed instantly. No, they whispered, that's not acceptance. That's locking in. I felt it too, a pressure settling, a definition forming around me again, not freeing me, fixing me. I took a step back, then another. The stranger reached for me. Don't! But their hand passed through. They were fading again, faster this time, because something had been chosen, something final. The voice whispered one last time. You never left, and the space agreed. Chapter 15. Finding the Way Back. The agreement wasn't a sound. It was a click in reality, soft, final, like something locking into place after a long, patient search finally ended. The space around me stopped flickering, stopped shifting, stopped pretending it didn't know what I was, and suddenly, it did. The house was there again, not fully, not physically, but imposed over the emptiness like a memory stamped onto the world itself. The hallway, the upstairs door, the familiar creak of floorboards that I could almost hear. I staggered back. No. But it was already too late. The stranger was barely visible now, their form thinning like smoke pulled apart by wind. You did it, they said. I shook my head quickly. I didn't do anything. It did this. That's what I mean, they replied softly. It accepted your version. My version of what? The space tightened. Not violently, intentionally. The voice returned, not distant anymore, not layered, not fragmented, whole, close, behind me. You came back. My blood ran cold. I turned, and there it was. Not fully formed, not fully anything, but enough. The presence from before. No longer just a voice, no longer just a pressure in the structure. Now it had shape, a suggestion of height, of outline, of attention focused entirely on me. The stranger tried to speak, but their voice cracked. This is bad, they managed. I noticed, I whispered. The presence tilted slightly, like it was studying me, confirming me. You broke the loop, it said. I didn't, I said quickly. I refused it. A pause, then, same outcome. The space around us sharpened again. The house behind it solidified further. The upstairs door became clearer, more real, waiting. The stranger flickered harder now. It's reconstructing the original path, they said urgently. It's trying to put you back where you started. I don't want to go back, I said. That's irrelevant now, they replied. The presence stepped forward, not walking, not moving in space, more like the world adjusting around it. With every shift, the house behind it became stronger, more defined, more inevitable. I felt it in my chest, the pull, not physical, narrative, like something insisting I return to where the story began. You can still fight it, the stranger said quickly. How? No, I snapped. Anchor differently, they said. Not denial, not refusal, something stronger. Like what? They hesitated. Then, choice. The word hit differently this time, not as a trap, but as a possibility. The presence spoke again. You belong here. The house behind it stabilized further. The upstairs door was now fully visible. The same door, the first door, the beginning. I could feel it. The story trying to close itself by returning me to where everything started. Completing the loop. Finishing the shape. The stranger reached toward me, weaker now but urgent. If you step into that version, you'll become fixed. Permanent. It won't need to chase you anymore. That sounds like losing, I said. It is, they replied. A pause, then softer. But it's also how most people survive this. The presence waited, patient, certain. The house waited with it. Familiar. Safe in a way that wasn't real, but felt convincing enough to swallow me whole. I looked at the door, then at the stranger, fading, almost gone. What happens to you if I go back? I asked. They smiled faintly, a tired, broken thing. I already told you, they said. I was here to keep you moving. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have left. Silence stretched. The presence stepped closer again. The house sharpened further. The pull increased. Everything in the space leaned toward resolution, toward ending, toward the first step. I exhaled slowly, and for the first time, I didn't resist it. I understood something simpler. Not everything could be broken. Not everything could be refused, but it could be changed. I stepped forward. The presence stilled. The stranger looked alarmed. Wait. But I wasn't going toward the house, not directly. I reached instead for the space between. The seam. The place where reality was still deciding what it was. I don't go back as I was, I said quietly. The presence shifted sharply. The house flickered. No, I continued. If I go back, it's because I choose what I take with me. The stranger froze. The presence tightened. You return, it insisted. I shook my head. I return changed. The space cracked, not breaking, not collapsing, rewriting. The house trembled. The upstairs door flickered. And the stranger, for the first time, didn't fade. They steadied. The presence reacted instantly. Confusion, then pressure. The system didn't like contradiction again. But this time, I wasn't rejecting it. I was rewriting the terms. I choose what stays, I said. The house flickered harder. The presence hesitated. And in that hesitation, I stepped forward. Not into the house, not away from it, but through it. And everything changed. Chapter 16. What we carry forward. The moment I stepped through, the world didn't break. It translated. The house, the presence, the stranger, everything folded into something thinner, like reality turning a page it wasn't sure it was ready to read. For a split second, I was nowhere. Not empty, not gone, just unplaced. Then I was standing in the hallway again. My hallway. The one I had seen 1,000 times and never really looked at properly until now. The light was normal. Too normal. Morning light spilling through the window at the end of the corridor. Dust floating lazily in the air, the familiar creak under my feet when I shifted my weight. It should have felt like relief. It didn't, because I could still feel it. All of it, behind the walls, under the floor, waiting just slightly out of phase with everything I was supposed to accept as real. I swallowed hard. I'm back, I whispered. No answer came, but something was different. I wasn't alone in the same way anymore. The stranger stood beside me, fully, stable, real. They looked around slowly, like someone seeing sunlight for the first time, in a place they weren't sure they deserved to be. It worked, they said quietly. I blinked. We're actually back? They nodded. Mostly. That's not reassuring. It's the best version we get, they replied. I stepped forward carefully. The floor felt normal, but I didn't trust it, not anymore. Where is it? I asked. The stranger hesitated. That depends what you mean, they said. I exhaled sharply. Don't start that again. A faint, tired smile crossed their face. It never stopped. I moved down the hallway slowly. Every detail was the same, and yet not. The photographs on the wall looked slightly off, the angles too precise, the shadows too patient, like the house had been recreated from memory or imitation. I stopped near the stairs. My chest tightened. This is still connected, I said. Yes, they replied. Then it didn't end. No, they said softly. It adapted. A cold realization settled in. So what now? I asked. The stranger looked at me for a long moment, not like before, not like something fading, like something choosing what to become. That's the part you decide, they said. I let out a short breath. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true, they replied. Silence stretched, and then a faint knock echoed somewhere in the house. Not loud, not urgent, just present. 3 taps. My blood ran cold. The stranger didn't react immediately. That was worse than panic. That shouldn't be here, I said quietly. No, they agreed. The knock came again, closer, from somewhere inside the structure of the house. Not the door, not outside, inside. I turned slowly toward the staircase. The upstairs door was there, closed, still, familiar, but not the same door anymore. Something about it felt aware, watching, waiting. The stranger stepped closer to me. We didn't close it, they said. I frowned. We closed what? The story, they replied. Another knock, closer still. My stomach tightened. So what do we do now? I asked. The stranger looked at me, and for the first time since this began, there was no certainty in their expression. We learn how it follows us, they said quietly. A pause. Then, and we decide what parts of it we keep alive. The knock echoed again. Right above us, on the upstairs landing, I stared at the door, and I understood something I didn't want to understand. The ending hadn't stopped it. It had just brought it home. Chapter 17, A New Beginning. The knock didn't repeat. It waited instead. Like it had learned patience was more effective than force. I stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, my gaze locked on the upstairs door. It looked ordinary again, wood, paint, a simple handle, but I couldn't stop seeing what I knew was underneath it now. Something listening, something remembering. The stranger shifted slightly beside me. It's not trying to break in, they said quietly. I swallowed. Then what is it doing? A pause. Checking if we're still consistent, they replied. That's a horrible sentence. Yeah, they admitted. It usually is. Another silence settled between us. The house felt normal again, but it was a fragile normal, like a glass surface holding pressure underneath it, waiting for the smallest reason to fracture. I took a careful step back from the stairs. I don't think we fixed anything, I said. We didn't, the stranger said. That honesty landed harder than anything else. So what was the point? I asked. The stranger looked around slowly, as if searching for words in the structure itself. Before, they said, it was trying to make you part of a single story. And now? It knows that didn't work. My chest tightened. So it's trying something else. Yes. A faint sound crept through the house. Not a knock this time. Something softer, like movement. Somewhere above us, the floor creaked. Slow, deliberate. I exhaled sharply. It's still here. It never really leaves, the stranger said. It just changes how it connects to you. I rubbed my face with my hands for a moment. That's not comforting. I wasn't aiming for comforting, they replied. I lowered my hands. The silence stretched. Then I said it. "What are you?" The stranger didn't answer immediately. For the first time, there was no careful hesitation like before. Just a quiet, honest pause. Then, "I'm what stays behind when you refuse the ending." I stared at them. "That doesn't sound like a person." "It isn't," they said gently. The words should have scared me more than anything else so far, but instead, they clarified something. "You were made by it," I said slowly. The stranger nodded once. "To keep you from collapsing the first time you noticed the structure," they said. "And now?" A faint shift in their expression. "Now I don't know," they admitted, "because you changed the rules I was built on." That should have felt like victory. It didn't. Because the house creaked again above us. Closer. Not just presence now. Attention. I turned back toward the stairs. The door at the top hadn't moved, but I could feel something behind it, not waiting anymore, deciding. "What happens if I open it?" I asked quietly. The stranger looked at it too, then back at me. "I don't think it matters anymore," they said. "That's not helpful." "It's honest." Another pause. Then they added, "But I think it wants to see what you choose when you're not being forced." I frowned. "And if I don't open it?" "Then it will choose for you," they said. That settled the weight of the moment in a different way. Not urgency, responsibility. I stepped forward slowly. One step, then another. The stranger didn't stop me, but they stayed close. Not guiding anymore, just present. The stairs creaked under my feet, familiar, real, grounding in a way I didn't fully trust anymore. Halfway up, I stopped. "I don't know what's behind that door," I said. "I know," the stranger replied. I looked back at them. "And you're not going to tell me?" "No," they said. "Why not?" "Because if I do," they said quietly, "it stops being your choice again." That landed differently this time, heavier, more final. I turned back to the door. The handle was still, but I realized something then. The knock hadn't been a threat. It had been a question. I reached out slowly. My hand hovered over the handle, and for the first time since this began, I wasn't trying to escape what was behind it. I was trying to understand what I would become if I opened it. The house held its breath. The stranger didn't move, and the silence waited with me.